Jai Jai Ni. Ah, one moment. Let me just get this. Am I live now? Oh, okay. All right, this is the first time I'm doing this. Right. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gaurang Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gaurang. Let me, I forgot to announce it. Let me do this one. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. All right, I don't know how this works. This is not the right one. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. I want to know how to share this. I guess if people know my channel, they should be able to find it. I see. It's hard to tell. All right, let me try this again. I was joking in the airport. I wasn't really joking. That what did I see? Was that it? Oh, okay. Here it is. All right, I got it. All right. I'm so sorry I'm so sorry. This is the first time I had done this, so I would like to get started. So we start with a little bit of kirtan, and then I will read from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Jasodanandana Sachisuta Gaurachandra, Jai Jai Rahini Nandana Balarama Nityananda, Jai Jai Mahavishnu Avatar, Shri Advaita Chandra, Jai Jai Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jai Jai Khandavasi Narahari Murari Mukunda, Jai Jai Swarup Rupa Sanatana Raya Ramananda, Jai Jai Namacharya Haridasa Thakur Rayananda, Jai Jai Uriya Gauriya Jata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jai Jai Haya Chenar Hobe Jata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Tomra Sabai Mili Koro Daya Ami Ati Manda Jeno Akul Prane Gaite Pari Hani Tai Gauranga Gai Jeno Hani Tai Gauranga Gai Jeno Hani Tai Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Vande Guru Ishar Bhaktan Ishani Shavakarakan tat prakashanscha tat shakti Krishna Chaitanya Sangyakam Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaurodaye Pushpavanto Chitro Shando Tamo Nudo Yadadvaitam Brahmopanishadi Tadapyasya Tanubha Ya Atmantariyami Purusha iti so Syangsha Vibhava Sharaishwariyai Purna Yaiha Bhagavan Sa Swayamayam Na Chaitanyat Krishnat Jagati Paratatvam Paramiha Anarpitacharin Chirat Karunayavatirna Kalau Samarpayatum Munnato Jvalarasam Swabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dhyutikadamba Sannadipitaha Sada Hridaya Kandare Sfuratuva Sachinandanaha Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Haladini Shaktirasmat Ekatmana Api Bhuvi Pura Deha Bhedangatau Chaitanyakhyam Prakatamadhuna Tatadadvayam Chaikyamaptam Radha Bhava Jyoti Suvalitam Naumi Krishna Swarupam Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kidrisho Vanayaiva Swadyo Yenadbhutamadurima Kidrisho Vamadiya Sokyam chasya madanubhavata kidrishang veti lobhat tadbhavarya samajani sachi garbha sindho harinduhu Sankarshana karanato yashayi Garbhodashayi chapayobdhishayi Sheshascha yasyam shakalah sanitya Nandakya ramam sharanam mamastu Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Manda Mate Gati Matsarvasva Padam Bhojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Brindaranya Kalpadrumadha Srimadratnagara Singha Sanasto Shri Shri Radha Srila Govinda Devo Krishnadibhi Sepyamano Smarami Shriman Rasarasarambihi Vamshi Vata Tatastitaha Karshan Venu Swanair Gopi Gopi Nata Sri Stunaham Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Eche Gosaira Kuri Charana Vandan Jaha Huite Vighna Avishta Pura. So the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in the 8th chapter, Yang yang vapi smaran bhavam jajantyante kaleva tam tame vaiti konte asadatad bhava bhavita. So, at the time of death, it is that upon which the mind dwells that determines the destination after death. So this is a basic principle of the concept of metempsychosis, right? The transmigration of the soul. That at the time of death, one passes from one body to the next. And of course, when we say what you're thinking about at the time of death, it's not just what you're thinking about, it's what you have become. Because your thoughts, the conscious thoughts are just the external reflections of the unconscious personality. Like the waves on the surface of the ocean, which might be miles and miles deep. So in the Vaishnava concept, or you could say it's also the Hindu concept, but it's a general Hindu concept, but it's also, as a Vaishnavas, we accept it. Right? The principle that's stated in the Bhagavad Gita, that just as a soul, dehinosmin yatha dehe komaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuhyate. At the time of death, one passes from one body to the other. Just like in this body, we can have the experience of changing. We have experience of changing. I'm looking at myself on my image here, and I see an old man. But I was not always an old man. So the witness, the one who is watching the changes of the body, he remains unchanged. To see this old body in front of me is a bit of a surprise still. And I see I see pictures of myself when I was younger. And I know I was present in that body, but that body certainly has changed in its appearance. So in the Gita, Krishna says that just like those external changes are taking place even while we're in this body, at the time of death, we pass on to another body. And that transition is determined by what we've done with this life, by your composite personality, and especially by what is in your conscious mind. So by especially what is in your conscious mind, because as one ages and one comes to the time closer to the time of death, one has time to reflect on what one's life was all about, and what the purpose of that life was, and who you are, what your identity is after all this time you've had to figure yourself out and to figure out your destination, who it is that you want to, what is it that you really aspire to as a conscious being. So if your life has been dedicated to that pursuit, you can be sure that even though there are some sanskaras that might be left, some residue of other desires and of other conditions that were placed on you with your birth in a particular species, in a particular country, in a particular family, and so on, in a particular time. So that's what we're concerned with here today as we're talking about. So there are many examples of death in the Shastras, but I think that this one here is rather poignant. Haridas Thakur is not just a minor character in Chaitanya Lila. And what's interesting about Haridas Thakur is that, well, I don't want to get too technical here, but there are several books that were written as biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And of those books, the two most important that have survived and are well loved are the Chaitanya Bhagavat and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Haridas Thakur is spoken of extensively in both of these books, but the stories that they tell are quite different in each one, because Chaitanya Charitamrita is preoccupied with the latter part of Chaitanya's life when he was in Jagannath Puri, whereas the Chaitanya Bhagavat is more preoccupied with what was going on in Navadvip. But Haridas Thakur was a participant both in the Navadvip Lila and in the Puri Lila. So if you ever go to Jagannath Puri, I haven't been there for a long time, but I remember going to Siddha Bakul. So Siddha Bakul lies in between the Gambhira. So there's a road, the main road, which goes from the temple to the ocean, and which is called the Swarga Dwara Road. And on that Swarga Dwara Road, you find many of the very most important heritage buildings and heritage places of Jagannath Puri. Of course, Jagannath Puri is much more than that, but especially because that you have the temple, the Jagannath temple, and then you go down a little further and you come to Kashi Mishra's house. And so Kashi Mishra's house was where Chaitanya stayed. And then on the right-hand side, you have Chandan Sarovara, you have where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya lived. And then you go on a little further and you come to Siddha Bakul, which is where Haridas Thakur and Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami stayed. But of course, Rupa Sanatana, they only came and stayed for a short time, whereas Haridas Thakur stayed there for a long, long time. And so in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it tells how Mahaprabhu used to go regularly on his way to bathing in the ocean, because then you go from Haridas Thakur's, from Siddha Bakul, you go, and about, maybe a half a kilometer or a kilometer, I don't think it's a whole kilometer, half a kilometer, you go further down, you come to the Swarga Dwara, you come to the beach and to the ocean. That's where Mahaprabhu would go to bathe. And now that's where, in that exact spot, is where Haridas Thakur's Samadhi is situated. So Haridas Thakur's Samadhi, the temple is there on the beach. It's being run by the Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam people. It's well, of course, it's Haridas Thakur's Samadhi, so what else can we say about it? So let me start. I wanted to say one more thing. Of course, I wrote this on my preview, and that was that how I come to say this, because this is, of course, a memorial for my own son. Now, my own son, we don't, the love that a father and a mother have for their child, this is not something that depends on any kind of religious condition. Although if one's child develops and matures into a good human being, then the development of the child into an adult is an inspiration for the parents. Actually, I was just reading about this in Priti Sandarbha. I hope I won't be going off the topic too much, but I've been spending a lot of time with Priti Sandarbha lately. And there, Jiva Goswami talks about love. And Priti Sandarbha means it's a treatise on love. So he's discussing love in relationship to Krishna and what's in the scripture. But of course, we can take it that it's educational for us also as human beings, because after all, Krishna is playing the role of a human being. So really what we should be thinking is that Krishna is showing us how it's to be done. There are different dimensions, of course, in which we look at this topic, but let's say for now that when Jiva Goswami talks about the nature of love, and what he's interested in especially is the strength of love, in the power of love. He wants to show that the best love is the strongest love. So I think that's the premise, and how he defines the strongest love. Well, of course, there are characteristics that we're going to look for. But right now, in the topic that he's discussing now is the question of relationship. So those of the devotees who are familiar with the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and so on know that there are 5 kinds of loving relationship. We talk about those 5 kinds of loving relationship to God, but these are all human relationships. So these are called Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhur. So now Jiva Goswami here in the Priti Sandarbha, he's particularly interested in the relationships that are formed, because he says that he's established that the Brajavasis, they have natural madhuryamoy love for Krishna. That the Brajavasis, that they don't see, even that Krishna can be loved, or can be loved in 2 ways. Either you look at Krishna in terms of his Aishwarya, in terms of his glory, in terms of his majesty, or you look at him in human terms as one whom one loves, in whom the object of love. So now the 2 kinds of love, Jiva Goswami establishes that it's the love that comes from that intimate human association that is stronger than the love that comes from dedication to a powerful entity, or like a king or the boss, as a servant, or just as a distant admirer. So all those kinds of relationships, those are all relationships that we experience as human beings. And even though the scriptures are always warning us about attachments in this material world, in fact, there's no way that we can know about love unless we know it from our human experience. Because that's what we have to be in relationship to Krishna, is we have to have this human, we want to understand that Krishna, wants to have a human experience with his devotee. So for the devotee, that's an easy thing, because the devotee is already human. For Krishna, it's another matter. He has to become human, let's say. But of course, that's an exaggeration. I'm saying he must become human. He must become human in our minds, because we say that Krishna, Nara Lila Tahara Swarup, Krishna's natural form that's his Swarup. So we experience relationships in this world. And in those relationships, the natural relationships, those natural relationships by the structure of the material nature are very powerful. And the relationship that we have with God, for it to be that powerful, is a very, very stringent requirement. if you don't know what it feels like, if you don't know what it feels like, you have to learn to transmit that feeling. You have to learn what it means to feel about Krishna that strongly. Yuvatinam yatha yuno, yunang cha yuvato yatha, manobi ramate yadvat, manobi ramatam tvai. Ya pritir avivekanam vishayeshu anapayini, tvam anusmaratah same hridayat mapasarpatu. All these verses that say that love for Krishna, let it be like my love, like the love of a young man for a young woman, that same kind of attraction, that same kind of immediate attraction. Let me have that right away for God. And the love that people have for their objects of love in this world. Prahlad Maharaj says, may that love not go away from my heart, but remembering you. I will be remembering you. In other words, may I have that same kind of love for you. So there's something to be said about understanding love. And when we read a book like Ujjvala Nilamani or Priti Sandarbha, which is describing these things, then we start to understand what it means, what love means. So there, what's happening in Gokul, what's happening in Goloka, what's happening in Vrindavan, that Krishna is there with his family. It's with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. It's with his friends, the Sakhas. It's with the gopis. And there's a degree of power in the strength of those relationships. So the friendship, kinship, it's the kinship. Krishna's friends are kinsmen. Krishna's friends are his own village folk. They're family members in a village way. And probably they are family members. They probably are related, not very far back in a small community like that. So they're kinsfolk, they're brothers, they're his brothers. So that's a relationship. And stronger than that is parent to child, Vatsalya Rasa. And stronger than that is Madhura. So Vatsalya Rasa is placed very high. That the strength of a mother for the child, that's something that is recognized as being of extraordinary, powerful bond. And one of the reasons, people mock Indians for having a sacred cow, for making the cow sacred. And they present all kinds of, economic reasons and so-called pious reasons that some poor people will be deprived of a living if we don't allow them to kill the cows. But let's not exaggerate. I'm not going to get into that subject too much. But the example that Jiva Goswami himself gives from the Bhagavatam, that when Mother Devahuti, when Kapila had left for the forest, then Kardama had left for the forest, and then after that Kapila left also. And so on. So Devahuti was deprived not only of her husband, but also of her son, both of them who renounced and went into the forest and left her alone. Of course, she would never have been alone. She was a princess. But nevertheless, it says that like a cow grieves for its calf. That's the example that's given. So she grieved like the cow grieves for its calf. This is why, one of the reasons why in Indian culture the cow is sacred. Just think about that for a minute, please. All right. So let me get to the matter at hand. As usual, I've gone on with a preamble, and I could probably go on preambling here for the time, but this is about a wonderful death from Chaitanya Lila. And this is one of the most beloved chapters of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that is why the woman whose son had committed suicide wanted that this should happen. We'll see that. What is suicide? Suicide is voluntary death. And Haridas Thakur's death was a voluntary death. Slightly different, let's say. Nevertheless. Om Namami Haridasam Tam Chaitanyang Tan Satat Prabhum Sangstitamapi Anumurtim Swanke Krutva Nanarta Saham. So this is the picture that we often see. Actually, in my new room, I have a picture there on the wall. Mahaprabhu dancing with the body of, while he's carrying the body of Haridas Thakur. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always described as having a rather tall and strong body. And Haridas Thakur would have been small, and he would have been thin, and he would have been old. In all likelihood, his dead body was like carrying a basket of feathers. But they didn't put Haridas Thakur on a stretcher. Mahaprabhu carried him while they did kirtan and took him to the ocean side. So I bow down to that Haridas Thakur, and I bow down to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his Prabhu, his master, who placed his body on his lap and then danced with it. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Dayamoy Jaya Dvaita Priya Nityananda Priya Joy Jaya Srinivaseshwara Haridasanath Jaya Gadadhara Priya Swarupa Prananath Jaya Kashi Misra Jagadananda Praneshwar Jaya Rupa Sanatana Raghunatha Ishwar Jaya Gaura Deha Krishna Swayam Bhagavan Kripa Kari Deho Prabhu Nija Padadan. So this is the usual invocation at the beginning of each chapter. And one of the features of the Chaitanya Lila, I think that there was, the devotees were struck by the good fortune of those who had direct association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When it becomes established that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this also happens even in modern day sects or cults or whatever happens, you call them a cult. We can call them cults, let's not be afraid of words. But when in a guru-centered community, let's call it that. So in a guru-centered community, you often see that same thing happening. Who had the fortune of some personal association, of some personal mercy from the guru, like that. So this became a very, very important thing. Like Narottam Das Thakur in his prarthana, he says, Samara Sangi, the ones who are all the associates. Jai Korilo Tara Sangha. Tara Sangha nahi hoilo more. Right? So he says that I didn't get the people who associated with the Chaitanya, I didn't even get the association of those who had associated with Chaitanya, like that. And this is the idea of how parampara comes about. The idea that it's a transmission of mercy. That these ones were close, so they got a bigger dose of mercy. So they pass it on. It's something that's transmissible. So here he mentions Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the context of Advaita, Nityananda, Srinivas, and then Haridas Thakur, of course, and then also Gadadhar and Swarup Damodar and Kashi Mishra, Jagadananda. So these were all people who were especially prominent in the Jagannath Puri Lila. And Jaya Rupa Sanatana Raghunatheshwar. So all of these are prominent members of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's entourage. So he says, be merciful to me, O Lord. You are Krishna himself in the form of, in the body of Gaura. So please be merciful and give me your lotus feet. Nityananda Chandra Jaya Chaitanyera Pran Tomara Charanara Vinde Bhakti Dehodan Jaya Daita Chandra Chaitanyera Yacharjo Swacharane Bhakti Deho Jaya Daita Charjo Jaya Gaura Bhakta Gana Gaura Jara Pran Shaba Bhakta Mili More Bhakti Dehodan Jaya Rupa Sanatana Jiva Raghunath Raghunath Gopala Jaya Jaya Chaya Moranath E Shava Prasade Liki Chaitanya Lila Gun Jai Chetai Liki Kori Apana Pavon. So he goes, more names, of course, and ending with the 6 Goswamis. So it's the grace of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that the Goswami, 6 Goswamis have become so prominent. Kaviraj Goswami and Narottam Das Thakur, they're the ones who brought the Rupan Sanatan and Jiva Goswami into prominence in Bengal. So here he says, by the mercy of all these, I write about Mahaprabhu's Lila and about his qualities. And I'm writing in whatever fashion I can. Of course, we know that Kaviraj Goswami by this time was quite old. And he says his hands were shaking, and he had also had probably some kind of near-death experiences around that time, because in one place it seems that he was a bit frightened he wouldn't be able to finish the book. And so you see a little bit of a break in the sequence of events. All right, so let's go with the actual story. E mata Mahaprabhu Nilachale Bas Shangera Bhakta Gana Loya Kirtana Bilas Dine Nritya Kirtana Ishara Darashan Ratri Rai Sharupa Shane Rasa Asadan. So this is getting now quite late. This is for the Antya Lila. So the Antya Lila means the last, it's the last 12 years. Well, it's the last 18 years of Mahaprabhu's life. But in the 18 years of Mahaprabhu's life, it's a progression there of his becoming more and more deeply internalized. And so his interiorization is in the company of in the company of Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda. So this is one of the themes of the Antya Lila, the last part of the book, is where Krishnadas Kaviraj is giving some insight into what kind of things were occupying Mahaprabhu's mind during those periods of interiorization, of samadhi. So, well, the basis for his information is the testimony of Raghunath Das Goswami, and in all likelihood there was something from Swarup Damodar, and of course there were others who shared this information also, including Rupa and Sanatana. That's why you have in the Chaitanya Charitamrita so frequently the story of Rupa Goswami's insight into Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mind is stressed, because it wants to show that Rupa Goswami knew Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam, that he knew the inner workings of Chaitanya's mind. And so because of that, because of Rupa Goswami's insight, and because of the information that Raghunath Dasa provided, that Kaviraj Goswami is able to create a very realistic portrait of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's inner life. So here it says that in the daytime, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was engaged with his devotees and disciples in doing kirtan. But at night, he would spend that with his, and also going to the temple was a big part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's daily activities. He would go more than once to the temple for arti and so on. So, it says that during the day he would dance and do kirtan and go to the temple for darshan. And then at night he would spend the time discussing the intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna with Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai. So, "Ei mata Mahaprabhur sukhe kala jai, Krishnera biroho bikar onge nana hoy, dine dine bare bikar ratre otishoy, chinta udbeg pralapadi joto shastri koy, Sharupa Gosai ar Ramananda Rai, Ratri dine kore dohe prabhura shahai." So the deeper that Mahaprabhu was an exceptional example. I was talking before about, the relationships. So now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was so deeply immersed in Radha and Krishna Lila, and it was so real for him. That's the thing, these are things you can't really fake. So naturally, when we see outpouring of emotion, if we were to see Chaitanya today, sometimes the Christians sometimes say, if Jesus appeared today, probably he'd be thrown out of the church. It's the same thing with Chaitanya. If he came, he'd probably be thrown out of the mart, with his ecstasies and so on. So these are all described, all of the different transformations, the ecstasies that he underwent. So this is one of the things that amazed the people who saw it. That this was just an extraordinary outpouring of emotion in separation from Krishna. That where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Why can't I find Krishna? So this is what astonished people. So only Ramananda and Swarup Damodar could somehow or another keep Mahaprabhu calm. Ekadina Govinda Mahaprasada Loya Haridase Dite Gela Anandita Hoya Dekhe Haridasa Thakur Koriachena Shoyon Manda Manda Korite Chena Shanka Sankirtan. So Govinda is Mahaprabhu's servant. So Mahaprabhu used to send prasad every day for Haridas Thakur. So Govinda would bring Mahaprabhu's remnants. So this is not a small matter. I was talking before about those who receive the mercy of the avatar. Right? This is why Haridas Thakur is in such an exalted position. Haridas Thakur, he was born, of course, there's debates about this, but as far as we know, he's always called Javan Haridas, which means that he was a Muslim. So whether he was born a Muslim or whatever, sometimes the Brahmins can't stand it that he was born a Muslim. So they make him into a Brahmin who was given shelter by a Muslim family. But it doesn't matter. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed him his mercy. There was no prejudice against him for his so-called low birth. So one day, Govinda was coming with prasad, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prasad, to bring it to Haridas. And when he arrived there, he was very cheerful, in a cheerful mood. But when he got there, it says that he saw Haridas Thakur lying down on his bed and still chanting. So he was lying on the bed with the mala in his hand and still chanting Hare Krishna. They sometimes tell, of course, these are hearsay and probably not to be believed, but about some Nam Nishtha Babajis who are taken to the hospital with heart problems, and the doctor listens to the heartbeat, and what he hears is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So that's when someone has become so one with the holy name that even his heart beats in syncopation with the holy name. So I think that was Haridas Thakur's situation. But he's there and he's still chanting on Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But manda, very, very slowly and very softly. Govinda kohe utho ashi korho bhojan, Haridasa kohe aji koribo langhon. Shankha kirtana nahi puje, nahi pure kemone khaibo, Mahaprasad anyacho kemone upekibo. So we know that prasad in Jagannath Puri, and of course this is Jagannath prasad, and it's made Maha prasad because it was Chaitanya's prasad also. So Govinda Das says, listen, like Govinda Das says to Haridas, he says, get up, I brought you some food. Sit up and eat. I brought you some prasad. So Haridas says, today I'm fasting. Today I'm going to skip my midday meal. So he says, I haven't been able to fulfill my daily obligation, my vow. Now, he would daily chant a certain number of names. This is famous for 3 lakhs. So 3 lakhs, I mean, my own guru used to say he chanted, or he would say many, many lakhs, more than 3 lakhs. And you often hear sometimes people chanting 8 lakhs or 5 lakhs or whatever. But 3 lakhs is a pretty hefty number, believe me. To chant 3 lakhs properly, it would take you minimum 12 hours. I suppose, of course, it says that he chanted 1 lakh, he would chant aloud. So that takes longer. And then he would chant 1 lakh whispering, just so that he could hear. And then he would chant 1 lakh mentally also. So that was perhaps the meaning of the 3 lakhs. At any rate, he says, I couldn't fulfill my daily obligation of 3 lakhs of names. So I can't eat without having done that first. So this is the kind of dedication to vow that is highly admired, I think, across Hinduism. But in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, of course, all the Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami. They all performed these kinds of vows. And Haridas Thakur is perhaps the greatest example, because you just to chant 3 lakhs every day, consistently throughout one's life, this is a high demand to place on a person. That kind of, that many hours spent in meditation per day. So that consistent practice throughout one's lifetime. So he says, I haven't fulfilled my obligation of chanting the requisite number of names. Now, but you've brought me Mahaprasad, and that to dishonor this would be also a mistake. Eto boli Mahaprasad korilo bandhan, eka ranchalo yatar korilo bakhan. So eto boli Mahaprasad korilo bandhan. So Haridas Thakur folded his hands and he bowed to the prasad, and he took one little bite. Eka ranchaloyo. So ara dine Mahaprabhu tara thai aila, sustaho Haridasa tahare puchila. So the next day, Mahaprabhu, obviously Govindadas had told Mahaprabhu what had happened. So Mahaprabhu was concerned. And the next day he came himself and he asks Haridas, are you okay? Are you well? Namaskara korite ho koilo nivedon, sharira susta hoy mor, asusta buddhimon. So this is a very well-known line. So Mahaprabhu asks him how you are, and Haridas Thakur sits up a little bit and he folds his hands and offers his pranam to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he says, my body is okay. It's my mind. It's my intelligence that are not well. Sharira sustamor asusta buddhimon. So Prabhu kohe kon vyadhi kohoto nirnoy, teho kohe na shankar shankirtan na puroy. So the Mahaprabhu asked him, what's the matter? What's wrong? Tell me what's the illness that's bothering you? And so he says, I can't fulfill my number of holy names that I have vowed. Prabhu kahe briddha hoila shankha alpa koro, siddha deho tumi sadhane agraha kena dharo. So it's very nice. Mahaprabhu says to him, you're old. You can reduce the amount of chanting that you do. You're already perfected. You've already attained the ultimate goal. So now why are you making so much trouble for yourself? Take it easy. Your mind is already fixed. Your heart, if we could listen to your heart, it would beat the holy name. So if your heart is beating the holy names, then what's the problem that you haven't been able to keep the rule of chanting X number on so many beads? Loka nishtarite e tomar avatar, namera mohima loke korila prachar, ebe olpa shankha kori koro sankirtan, Haridasa kahe shuno mora nivedon. So Mahaprabhu continues in this vein. He says that you're a perfected being. You descended into this world perfect. You are an incarnation who has come into this world in order to save people by showing them the glories of the holy name. In another place in Mahaprabhu it says, that achar prachar kori dui kaj. Tumi jagatera guru, jagatera aj. Keo prachar kore, na kore achar. Keo kore achar, na kore prachar. Achar prachara name kori dui kaj. Tumi jagatera guru, tumi jagatera aj. So this is saying to Haridas Thakur that you are the guru of the world because you not only practice but you preach, and you not only preach but you practice. Not everybody does that. So here again Mahaprabhu says, Namera mahima loke korite prachar. Ebe alpa sankhya kori koro sankirtan. So now reduce. Yeah, take it easy. Haridasa kohe shuno mora nivedon. Haridas Thakur says, no, there's something a little bit more. There's something else. Hina jati janma mor ninda kolebo. Hina karme ratamui adhama pamor. Adrishya osprishya more angikara koile. Gauraura bhaite tuli more vaikunthe charaile. Swatantra Ishvara tumi ho ichhamoy. Jagat na chao jare jaiche ichha hoy. Anek na chale more prasad korila. Viprera sradho patra kainu mlecha hoya. Eka bacha hoy moro bahudin hoite. Lila sangaribe tumi loi mor chitte. So he says, Haridas says, listen, I have a request. I belong to a low caste, outcast. Right? This is you have to remember in this time and place. Muslims and Hindus, they might live close, but their two worlds don't collide. I see this even today. You might have a village where there are Muslims and Hindus both living, and it's like there's an invisible wall between them, except maybe in the marketplace. So the Muslims were considered to be outcasts. They were considered to be unclean. They eat cow. So how can you deal with these people? And besides that, they're a nasty piece of work. They force people to convert and all kinds of things. They abuse, they destroy temples. They act in ways that in the Puranas would be described as demoniac. So that was the way that, generally speaking, that Hindus thought of Muslims, that they're demoniac. And even now today, I think that there's a strand of Hindus who believe that there is a demoniac spirit in Islam. But that's another matter. But Haridas Thakur was born in a Muslim family. Of course, Bengali is very different. I don't want to make into this prejudice against Islam, although it's difficult not to go there sometimes, especially if you have some knowledge of Indian history. And you're not a Muslim. Right. So he says, so he goes on here. And this is just not one place, but there's a passage in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, that Mahaprabhu chose to, use people who were in some way socially, let's say, excluded. Rupa and Sanatan their social status as Brahmins was very dubious. They considered themselves also to be outcast because of their long association with the Muslim royalty. And other members of the, other Haridas Thakur and so on, Ramananda Rai. So Ramananda Rai was also considered a Shudra, not a Brahmin. So Mahaprabhu, through these people, even through Prataparudra, through these people, he demonstrated some important fundamental principles of this religion or this path of devotion that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught. So Haridas Thakur specifically is designated as Namacharya, as the one who demonstrated the holy name. So also the importance of the fact that he was a Muslim by birth, showing that birth was not considered to be an obstacle to becoming highly advanced, to getting the direct mercy of the divine person himself. So you have to understand that in the context of that time and place, this is rather something significant. And not only that, but it's significant that the others, also Rupa and Sanatana. It shows how, historically speaking, that Chaitanya Lila is embedded in this tense period of Muslim domination and the effects that it was having on the Hindu culture in Bengal. So, but Haridas Thakur accepts it. This is the interesting thing here, you see, just to say Haridas Thakur is accepting this identity. He's accepting that there is a hierarchy and that what he is doing as a devotee of the holy name, because he wasn't allowed to go in the temple, he's not allowed to do the kinds of things that other devotees are doing. So he says, I'm from a very low caste. My birth is low. My body is condemned. I am engaged in sinful activities. I am not. No one should touch me. No one should touch me. No one should look at me. But you accepted me, and you pulled me out of the hellish existence that I was in. And you brought me into the spiritual world. Swata, you are the independent Supreme Lord, and your will is complete. You are completely free in your actions. You make the world dance, and you make everyone dance according to your wish. So you made me dance a lot in this life by showing me your great grace upon me. Even I was honored when Advaita Acharya was doing a shraddha, to his forefathers. Then there was like the shraddha patra. So the shraddha patra means the most honored guest. So just like in the Bhagavatam, the story of Yudhishthira's Rajasuya, that Krishna was made the chief guest. So in that situation, Advaita Acharya recognized Haridas Thakur's achievement as a sadhaka and gave him the honor of giving him the first prasad, the first prasada plate. So he says, but I have had a particular worry. Now he says that in this life you have made me dance a lot. That's an important thing here. He's saying you have made it so that I've been honored in this world, even though how do I have any qualification to be honored in the Vaishnava Samaj? I can relate to that. So, Viprera Sradhabhata, so he says, now, he says, it has come to my mind that you will be leaving the world soon, that your Lila is going to come to an end. So Haridas Thakur was an old man by this time. He must have been, let's say, 80. I mean, I don't know, but definitely he is an old man. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is still in his 40s, his mid-40s. He leaves his body when he's 48 under mysterious circumstances, let's say. There's no reliable account of how Mahaprabhu left this world. But at any rate, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was still young, so how did Haridas Thakur know? So Lila Shangoribe tumi loy mora chitte, se Lila Prabhu more kobuna de kaive. So he says to him, you are, well, it's a very interesting thing if you think an 80-year-old man talking to a 45-year-old man. Yet this 45-year-old, these two personalities who are certainly extraordinary personalities in their own right. So quite naturally, I would think that there was a kind of a paternal relationship here. So now if you think that, let's listen to this and think about the situation of a parent who loses a child. So Lila Shambharibe tumi loy more chitte, Shri Lila Prabhu more kabuna dekaibe. So don't ever, Shri Lila Prabhu more kabuna dekaiba, apunara age more sharira pariba. So he says, it's come to my mind that you're going to leave your body soon. But please, I don't ever want to see this happen. I don't ever want to see you leave your body while I'm still living. Here I am in my old age. I've given my life to you. My great good fortune has been that I see you every day. I can't go inside the temple, but the walking Jagannath comes directly to my door to show me mercy. If you go to Jagannath Puri, there are many such stories of Jagannath taking human form, playing pranks on the people, or showing mercy to the devotees of Jagannath Puri. It's like that. So he says, I don't want to ever see you. I don't want to see this Lila. So please make it so that my body drops before yours. And that can be done. So apanara age. So apanara age can mean two things. Apanara age can also mean apanar samne. It can also mean that let me die, let my body drop in front of you. But he's going to go and say that more. Listen to this. Hridaye dharibo tomar kamala charan. Noyane dekhibo tomar chand bodhan. So I want to place your feet on my chest, feel them on my heart, your soft feet. I want that I should look upon your moon-like face with my eyes. Jihvayu charibo tomar Krishna Chaitanya nam e matamora ichha charibo paran. So with my tongue, I will chant out the name Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And in this way, at my own wish, I will give up my body. I will give up my life. মোর ইচ্ছা এই যদি তোমার প্রসাদ হয়, এই নিবেদন মোর করো দয়াময়. So this is my request. So please be merciful to me and grant me this, that I should be able to die in this way. এই নিচ দেহ পরে, এই নিবেদন মোর করুন দয়াময়, এই নিচ দেহ মোর পরে তব আগে, এই বাছা সিদ্ধি মোর তোমাতে লাগে. So this is the perfection of my desire. Vacha siddhi. Fulfill this desire, please. Prabhu kahe Haridas tumi je magibe, Krishna kripa moya taha obashya koribe. Kintu amar je kichu shuk sob toma hoite, sob toma loya, tomar jog nahe jabe, amare chariya. So Prabhu answers, you know, Haridas, that what you're asking for, Krishna will certainly fulfill it. But all my happiness, whatever happiness I know, it's coming from you. My joy at being here in Jagannath Puri is because you're here. So how is it that you're going to, it's not proper for you to abandon me here and go off. Charane dhori kohe Haridas, na kori ho maya, abashya modhame prabhu koro ei daya. So Haridas says, please don't play around. Please don't play around with me, you know. Please grant me this request. মোর শিরোমণি কত কত মহাশয়, তোমার লীলার সহায় কোটি ভক্ত হয়, আমাহেন যদি এক কীট মরি গেল, এক পিপিলিকা মইলে পৃথিবীর কাহা হানি হইল. So it says, you have so many disciples, so many devotees, and all of them are fit for me to hold on my head. I should hold their feet on my head. They're all superior to me in every way. They're all participating of thousands of people who are helping you with your Lila. You don't need me. If I'm just like an insect. If I die, what difference will that make? If an ant dies, what is that in the cosmic plan? What harm did it do to the earth if one ant should die? So Bhakata Vatsala Prabhu Mui Bhakta Bhas Abashya Purabe Prabhu More Ash Madhyana Korite Prabhu Chalila Apane Ishara Dekhiya Kali Dibe Darshane Tobe Mahaprabhu Tare Kore Alingon Madhyana Korite Samudre Korilo Gaman. So he says that, so Haridas continues, he says that you are someone who shows affection to his devotees, you're Bhakta Vatsal. And even though I'm just a pretend devotee, an incomplete devotee, still you will certainly fulfill this last request of mine. So Prabhu said that I will come and see you when I have tomorrow, after I've had darshan of the Lord of Jagannath. And then he went off, he embraced Haridas and went to the ocean to take his bath. Prato kale Ishara deki Shava Bhakta loya Haridase dekite aila Shigra koriya. So the next day, Mahaprabhu went in the morning as usual to the temple and had darshan of Jagannath. And as usual, so many devotees would come there to be with him at that time. This is actually, you can see something like this. It's very nice. If you go to Barsana and you see Binod Bihari Baba. So Binod Bihari Baba has his small entourage, half a dozen devotees, and of course, often there are people coming from outside. And so he goes when he does his Barsana Parikrama, and he's always accompanied by 10, 15, 20 people. So in the same way, this is what Mahaprabhu he would be. And so when he comes finally to the temple, when he arrives at the temple at the head of in Barsana, then always there's a circle of people there, 50, sometimes 60 people are sitting around, and he talks to the local people, and everybody listens to the Hari Katha. It's a very enchanting scene. So think like that. The Mahaprabhu came to the temple in the morning, and then all his associates gathered there also. And Mahaprabhu said, today we're going to see Haridas Thakur. We're not going to follow the regular plan here. We're going to go, this is the morning now, this is early in the morning, 6 o'clock around, or perhaps even earlier. So Haridas Rage Ashi Dilo Darashan, Haridas Bandilo Prabhur Ar Vaishnava Charan. So he arrived at Siddha Bakul, and there he appeared to Haridas Thakur. Haridas bowed down to the Lord and to all the Vaishnavas. Now Prabhu kahe Haridas kaho samachar, Haridas kahe Prabhu je agya tuma. So Prabhu says to Haridas, well, what's the news? Are you ready? Are you ready to go? You asked for it, so here I am. And Haridas said to him, just say the word. Just give the order. Angane arambhilo Prabhu Maha Sankirtan, Bakreshwara Pandita Taha Korena Nartan, Sharup Goshayadi Joto Prabhuragan, Haridase Beri Kori Nama Sankirtan. So Mahaprabhu gave the signal. The devotees started to do kirtan. Maha Sankirtan. It was an emotional scene. It was an emotional scene. So the kirtan, when the emotions are strong, the kirtan takes on special character. You will always remember the kirtans when your heart melted. You will remember those kirtans. They won't happen every day. They'll happen on special occasions. They'll happen on special occasions, like grief. Grief is a very special occasion. You have to know to take advantage of this situation, because the living have to live. And it is God's will that you live with this experience of grief. That you understand what it means to lose someone that you love. And you should understand that that is actually the ground zero of the existential situation of every living being. That every living being is separated from God and is feeling that separation. but because it's unconscious, because it's inchoate, because it's so deeply hidden under the baskets and stones of samskaras for lifetimes and lifetimes, that it only exists in the reflections of it that we experience in this temporary and miserable existence. So that's what the rasa theory is all about, my friends, and I can't explain all that to you. But I say that grief, the experience of grief, is a samskara that makes it possible for you to feel empathy. For instance, one devotee wrote to me and gave an offering of money because he himself had lost his son only a few months ago. So his grief made him more empathetic. So now how is that understanding of that human emotion? Krishna appears as a human being in order to understand human emotion, in order to experience human emotion. And this is why the rasa theory comes up, because grief is a rasa. Grief is a rasa, but it becomes a rasa when one is situated in knowledge, when one is situated in proper understanding of the self, and one is situated in a proper understanding of God as present in the emotion. And what happens then is that then you can absorb that emotion. Then you can take that emotion, you can make it a part of yourself. You can make it a part of what you are, and you become more empathetic. You become a better human being as a result of it. You become a more loving human being because you think, here I had the chance to love, and I tried to love to the best of my ability. And the essence of love, what is the essence of parenthood? It's to protect the child, to protect it against all dangers. And so when that was not possible, then the feeling of failure can be, debilitating. Anyway, so to return to Haridas. So Haridas is old and Mahaprabhu is still young. And yet Haridas has the intuition through his spiritual insight that Mahaprabhu is going to leave. So Mahaprabhu has come and he says, start the kirtan. And so there in that emotional situation, the devotees start the kirtan. And with the imminent departure of Haridas, tears are flowing copiously from everyone's eyes. Their voices are breaking. They're barely able to chant sometimes because they see this scene in front of them, this scene of love that is being played out in front of them. It's not just a scene of love, but it's a scene of the great yogis who are encountering here. Haridas Thakur, you don't think this is one of the reasons, of course, as I've said this already before, but one of the reasons we're glorifying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because his associates were so amazing. So here the devotees are surrounding and they're seeing Mahaprabhu giving this special mercy to Haridas Thakur. So a great emotional kirtan begins. Vakreshwar starts to dance. And so Swarup Damodar, he is the one who is the leader of the kirtan. And so they surround Haridas, who is lying there on his bed. Ramananda Sarvabhauma Shabhara Agrete Haridasa guna prabhu lagilo kaite. So then you can imagine, Mahaprabhu tells the kirtan to quiet them down. There they are. Mridangas are still playing, the kartals are still playing, but they're playing more softly. And maybe someone is still carrying on a little tune in the background while Mahaprabhu speaks. Haridasera guna prabhu lagilo kahite. Haridasera guna kahite holo shatamukha. Kahite kahite prabhur bare mahasukha. Haridaser gune shobhar vishita hai amon. Sarva bhakta bande Haridaser charan. So Mahaprabhu begins to glorify Haridas. So we won't do that. We could do that here. All the things in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, all the amazing activities that Haridas Thakur underwent, being beaten in 21 marketplaces for being a Muslim who was engaging in Hindu activities, being thrown in the ocean into the Ganges River thinking that he was dead, and so on and so forth. All these things that happened to Haridas Thakur. So he glorified him. And all the devotees were amazed. And so they went and they all bowed down and took the dust of Haridas's feet. Just think of this scene. These are not ordinary people. These are all people who are considered to be divine entities. All of them. And they're playing this game to show how one should die, what one should aim for. When the Bhagavad Gita says, yang yang vapi smaran bhavam, tyajantyante kalebram. This is what we should aspire to. So, Haridasa nijagrete prabhura boshaila, nija netre dui bringa mukhapadde dila, Shahridaye ani dhari prabhura charan, Sarva bhakta padarenu mastake bhushan. Sri Krishna Chaitanya naam bole bar bar, Prabhu mukha madhuri piye netre jaladhar. So if I don't say it, I will be at fault. But I belong to the ISKCON generation that was direct disciple of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So I know very well how he passed his last months and how he passed his last days and how he passed his last moments. And I know how it was even for us disciples who were very, very far away. And some, well, I was actually not that far, I was in Mayapur, but even so, we weren't directly present there. But when Prabhupada left, it was a cataclysmic experience. And the devotees who were there, and everybody, the first thing is chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. And there they chanted emotionally. I was saying before, if you've ever had Ashtasatvika Vikars, you will remember the kirtan. And of course, anybody who was in that kirtan remembers that kirtan. So you can think of that comparable experience. It's something very difficult to understand. Of course, ordinary people, they feel emotional when their family member dies. But this was something that went far beyond that. This is already, when you have a movement like this, what we call already a guru-centered community, then there's a certain very, very strong bond that is created between the people who are sharing in that life. And so that strong bond means that there is very deep communion felt. This gives strength also, gives spiritual strength to a movement. When people feel that strong emotional sense of common purpose and common spirit. So here we have the beginnings of the Sankirtan movement. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all these people are his most closest disciples, his closest associates. And so here they are doing kirtan. And Haridas Thakur brings Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sits him down in front of himself. And looking directly at Mahaprabhu's face, he takes his feet and places them on his chest. And then he repeats over and over again, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And tears poured from his eyes. And then as he was chanting, with the holy name, his life airs left his body. Mahajogeshwara pray Shachanda moron, Vishera nirjana shobhar hoilo sharon. So everybody was looked on in amazement, right? Because this was what you call, here uses the word swachanda moran. It's also called Charitamrita, or death by one's own desire. So this is Bhishma is the famous example of this, that he was Bhishma, wanted to, even though his entire body was pierced with arrows, he still could hold on to his life in the body until the time that he decided that he wanted to leave. So here they said, this is what Haridas has done. He's a Mahayogeshwar. He's a great yogi. And so he had that power to leave his body at will when the time came. Hari Hari Krishna Shabde Kore Kolahol, Premanande Mahaprabhu Hoilo Bihol, Haridaser Tanu Prabhu Kole Uthaiya, Angane Nachena Prabhu Prema Vishta Hoya. So Hari Hari Krishna Shabde Kore Kolahol. So a big noise went up. They were saying Hari Hari Krishna Krishna. And Mahaprabhu himself became overwhelmed by ecstasies of love. He picked up Haridas's body and started to dance there in absorption, in a state of trance. So Mahaprabhu's got this, we don't use the word samadhi, prema vishta. So prema vishta, when you're prema vishta, that means that the love is this overpowering emotion to the exclusion of everything else. This is why I talk about the strength of emotion. Right? This is an important thing here, the strength of the emotion. So here Chaitanya, if you think of the relationship of a younger person to an older person, a respected older person. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not kidding. Look at Haridas Thakur played a significant role in different places in the Chaitanya Lila, in connection with Raghunath Das Goswami, in connection with Advaita Prabhu, in connection with Nityananda Prabhu. A very interesting person in the Chaitanya Lila. So he's also emotional. Mahaprabhu is also feeling emotional. So Prabhura Aveshe Avasha Sarva Bhaktagan Preme Aveshe Sabe Nache Korena Kirtan Emota Nitya Prabhu Kore Katakon Sharupa Gosai Prabhu Ke Koilo Nivedon Haridasa Thakure tobe bimane choraiya, সমুদ্রে লইয়া গেলা কীর্তন করাইয়া, আগে মহাপ্রভু চলেন নৃত্য করিতে করিতে, পাছে নৃত্য করে বক্রেশ্বর ভক্তগণ সাথে. So they, Swarup Damodar is the one who usually had to keep the, while Mahaprabhu was off in some transcendent and divine state of samadhi or absorption, and Swarup Damodar was the one who would sort of bring him back to earth. So here he says, so what he did was, come on, let's move things on. What's the next thing to do? They get Haridas Thakur and place him on the palanquin, on a bier, right? This is called in Sanskrit or called in Bengali here. So Bimane Churai. So they use the word Biman. So here Biman. So we're usually now people use the word Biman. They like the Bangladesh Airlines is called Biman. But this just means a few sticks of bamboo. That's what it means here. They put the dead body on a few sticks of bamboo, and they call that a Viman. It's a Viman because it's a palanquin or something that you carry somebody on. And you cover the body with a white sheet. And of course, people come and put flower garlands and so on it. And then they went down, started walking towards the ocean. And all the devotees were doing kirtan, and Mahaprabhu was dancing in front. And so Vakreshwar is also dancing as the most prominent of all the dancers. Haridase samudra jale snana korailo, Prabhu kahe samudra e mohatirtha hoilo. So Haridas, he washed, Mahaprabhu himself took the body and washed it in the ocean water. And then he says to everybody, he announces that today the ocean has become sanctified and become an even, because already it was a tirtha. He says now it's become a mahatirtha. The water here in the ocean has become even more sacred by Haridas's bathing in it. So Haridase padodaka piye bhaktagan, Haridase range dilo prasada chandan. And they took the body from out of the water, and the devotees all took a few drops as Charitamrita. Then they covered the body with sandalwood paste and with garlands. Haridase range dilo, dora korara bastra ange dilo, balukara garta kuri tahe sho ailo. And they took all kinds of Jagannath prasadi vastra, some clothing, and they took some other articles from the Jagannath rituals, like from the Jagannath Ratha Yatra. The rope is considered to be a sacred thing that people like to keep, the pieces of the rope that was used to pull the chariots, and so on. So then, and then they made a hole, and they dug a hole in the sand, and they lay him down in it. Chari dekhe bhaktagana korena kirtan, Bakreshwara pandit korena anande nartan, Hari bola bole gaura rai, apani sri haste balu dilotar gai. So Mahaprabhu, the devotees are all doing kirtan, saying Hari bol. Mahaprabhu goes and he takes the first handful of sand and throws it on the body. So this is the thing that's called, nowadays we call this samadhi. So this is not everybody does this. Most devotees still are cremated. But in some Vaishnava sampradayas, in some circles, they have completely, all Vaishnavas are buried. So in a way that you could say that's they've taken the Muslim practice. But for the most part, most devotees are cremated. And if they want to make a particular temple to that person, then they bury the ashes there, and then build a little shrine on top of it. Full body samadhis are nowadays quite rare, and in Vrindavan they're actually illegal. So Prabhupada was one of the last people in Vrindavan to get a full body samadhi. I think that they somehow or another, it was also not permitted, but they managed to get around it somehow. So anyway, here, so this is the first real case that we hear about something like this happening, that they're burying Haridas Thakur rather than cremating him. Maybe they did it because he was a Muslim by birth. That's very possible. But at any rate, whatever the case, this is what they did. So the devotees are all chanting, and then Mahaprabhu, he throws the first bit of sand, and then the other devotees all come and they start to cover his body. Tabe Mahaprabhu koilo kirtana nartana haridani kola hole bhorilo bhuvan. Tabe Mahaprabhu shava bhakta gana sanghe samudre korila snana jalakeli range. Haridase pradakshina kori aila singhadare Hari kirtana kolahol sakala nagare. Singhadare ashi Prabhu pasari rathai achala patiya prasad magilo tathai. Haridas Thakurera Mahotsaver Tare Prasad Magiye Bikha Dehoto Amare Shunya Pasari Soba Changura Uthaya Prasad Dityashi Tara Anandito Hoya Sharup Goshai Posari Ke Nishedhilo Changra Loya Posari Posare Boshilo Sharup Gosai Prabhuke Gore Patailo Chari Vaishnavachari Pichara Sange Rakila. So what happens is the Mahaprabhu goes to they're all doing the kirtan, they return, they go take bath in the ocean, they encircle Haridas's grave, and then they go, or Haridas's samadhi, and then they go to the Singhadwara. So the Singhadwara means in front of the Jagannath temple. And so now what they're going to do is they're going to go and get prasad. So what they do is that they go and they go as beggars to all the people in the Ananda Bazaar. So in Jagannath Puri, they have all the people who sell prasad. So you go and you buy prasad there. Right? So they make a ton of prasad in the temple. They have huge kitchens and they produce a huge amount of prasad, but they sell it at the gate. So you come through the temple and you have to buy it inside the temple. You can't, I don't think there's anybody out on the street selling it. You have to buy it inside the temple. And so there the prasad, they got the prasad together. Swarup Damodar sent Chaitanya back, and then he arranged everything from all the people and got a few servants and strong people to bring large amounts of prasadam from the temple. So Shunya Pasha. So this is, and actually when the merchants there and they were quite happy to be giving prasad for this cause. So eke drobyer eke kapua ani deho more emota nana prasad boja bandhaya laya ailo chari joner mostake choraya baninath pattanayaka prasad yanila kashi misra oneka prasad pathaila shava vaishnavere prabhu bosaila shari shari Apani Paribeshe Prabhu Loya Janachari. So they brought, 4 men brought loads of prasad of different things, different preparations from the temple. And then also Kashi Misra and Gopinath, Vaninath Pattanayak and other people, wealthy disciples, wealthy followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They also sent a large amount of prasad. And so Mahaprabhu had all the devotees sit down in rows, and he started to serve himself with 4 other members of his team. Swarupa kahe Prabhu boshi koro darashan, ami ha shobalaya koriya paribeshon. So the Swarup Damodar always takes over, tells Mahaprabhu to sit down and watch, and he would direct the service of prasad. Swarupa Jagadananda Kashishwara Shankar Chari Jana Paribeshana Kori Nirantar. So Swarup Damodar, Jagadananda, Kashishwar. Kashishwar is also disciple of Rupa, disciple of Rupa Goswami, I believe. Shankar is also Orison. So Chari Jana Paribeshana Kori Nirantar. So they all serving. Prabhu na khaile keho na kore bhojan, Prabhu ke se dine kashi misher nimantron, apani kashi misraila prasada loya, Prabhu ke bhikkha korailo agraha koriya, Puri Bharatira sange Prabhu bhikkha koilo, Sakala Vaishnava tabe bhojana korilo. So nobody would eat for as long as Chaitanya was not eating himself. And that day was actually set aside as Kashi Misra's invite. Mahaprabhu would usually take lunch at a different person's house every single day. So the usual thing in Jagannath Puri is that when you have an invitation to somebody, you get Jagannath Prasad is all going to be on the menu. Like you're going to have some Jagannath Prasad, but then the family also has other preparations that they make, and so they're also offering their own home Prasad. So that day was Kashi Mishra's invitation. So he comes with his preparations that he has made for Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu sits down, and at Kashi Mishra's request, he starts to take prasad. And then all the other, Mahaprabhu is sitting, and also the other sannyasis like the Puris and Bharatis, and these are all sitting with him. And then once they've started to eat, so this is generally speaking the custom, that if there's one highly respected individual, the guru, then nobody will take prasad or nobody will start eating until that person, and nobody would be so disrespectful as to start eating before that person had actually started himself. So this is, we'd always wait. I've never been in a situation where people did not wait for the guru to start eating before they themselves ate. So Akhanda Sakala Vaishnava tabe bhojana korilo, Akhanta Puriya Shabar korailo bhojan, Deho boli Prabhu bolena bochon, Bhojana koriya shabe koilo achamon, Shabare porailo Prabhu malya chandan, Prema vishta hoya Prabhu kore boradan, Shuni bhakta ganer juraya mona pran. Okay, so this is the thing. So now everybody's washed their hands, they finished eating. Mahaprabhu gives them chandan, sandalwood paste, he puts a garland on them all. And then as they're going out, he says to them something, and this is also very, of this whole story, this verse is perhaps the most well-known. Haridaser Vijayotsav Jai Koilo Darshan, Jai Taha Nritya Koilo Jai Koilo Kirtan, Jai Tare Baludite Korilo Gamon, Tara Mahotsav Jai Ba Korilo Bhojan, Achire Hoibe Shobha Krishna Prema Prapti, Haridasa Darashane Hoi Oiche Shakti, Kripa kori Krishna more diachilo shango, Swatantra Krishner icha koilo shanga bhanga. So now when I think about that lady in Birnagar, about her son, and losing her son, and why she wanted to have Haridas, Thakur, it's this couplet here. So before he says, he says that Anyone who hears about Mahaprabhu, that Haridas's disappearance, everyone who dances, anyone who saw this event take place, who danced at it, who chanted kirtan at it, anyone who gave sand onto Haridas's body, anyone who took prasad at the feast in his honor, all of these people will attain Krishna Prem very quickly, because that is the power of seeing a saint like Haridas Thakur. But this line here, Haridas darashane hoye kripa kore Krishna more diyachilo sango স্বতন্ত্র Krishnera ichha koilo sanga bhango. So this is really all that a grieving person can say. That Krishna gave us the delight, Krishna gave us the pleasure, Krishna gave us the bliss of the association. We had the chance to know this person. We had the chance to be with this person. We had the chance to be even influenced by this person. And now Krishna, the one who gave us this association, now he's taken that same person away from us. So ultimately, we have to resign ourselves to God's will. But take delight in the moments that we did have together. Take delight into the positive side. Take delight in the divine being that we saw and that we knew. হরিদাসের ইচ্ছা যবে হইল চলিতে আমার শকতি তারে নারিল রাখিতে. When it was time for Haridas to go, and even I couldn't stop him. ইচ্ছা মাত্র কইল নিজ প্রাণ নিষ্ক্রামণ পূর্বে যেন শুনিয়াছি বিশ্বের মরণ হরিদাস আছিল পৃথিবীর শিরোমণি তাহা বিনা রত্ন শূন্য হইল মেদিনী. So he left his body of his own will, just like Bhishma in the past we heard. So he was the most glorious person in this world. He was Jagatera Shiromani. And now that he's left, the world has been deprived of a jewel. Jaya Haridas boli koro hari dhani eto boli Mahaprabhu nachena apani. Sobe gaye jai jai Jaya Haridas namera mohima sei korilo prakash. Jaya 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 Haridas নামের মহিমা সেই করিল প্রকাশ. So Mahaprabhu tells them, everybody chant Jai Haridas. Jai Haridas. So here in Vrindavan there's a sampradaya that goes Haridas, Haridas. They're talking about a different Haridas, Swami Haridas. But we can also say Jai Haridas. Mahaprabhu himself told his disciples to chant Jai Haridas. So that's what they did. Shobegai Jai 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 Haridas Namer Mahima Sei Korilo Prakash. So Jai, all glories to Srila Haridas Thakur, who preached, who demonstrated to the world the glories of the holy name. তবে মহাপ্রভু সব ভক্তে বিদায় দিল হর্ষ বিষাদে প্রভু বিশ্রাম করিল. So in a mixture of joy and grief, Mahaprabhu went back to his room and took rest. এই তো কহিল হরিদাসের বিজয় যাহার শ্রবণে কৃষ্ণে দৃঢ় ভক্তি হয় চৈতন্যের ভক্ত বাৎসল্যে ইহাতেই জানি ভক্ত বাঞ্ছা পূর্ণ কইল ন্যাসী শিরোমণি শেষকালে দিল তারে দর্শন স্পর্শন Tare kole kori koilo aponi norton. Apani sri haste kripaye balu tare dilo. Apani prasad magi mahotsav koilo. মহাভাগবত হরিদাস পরম বিদ্বান এই সৌভাগ্য লাগি আগে করিল পয়ান. So in this way I've talked to you, I've told you the story of Haridas's passing. So anybody who hears this will develop strong devotion for Krishna. In this story we have learned about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotion for his own devotees and how he fulfills their desires, the Nyasi Shiromani, the best of the sannyasis. So the best of the sannyasis, but here, what happens with the sannyasi, his family becomes the other sannyasis. And so this is the love of the devotees. Shesha Kali Dilotari, in the very last moments, he gave him darshan. He allowed him to touch his body. And he embraced him and held him and danced with his body. Then he went and begged for food. He placed sand on the buried body, to bury the body. He covered the body with sand. Then he went and begged prasad for the feast in honor of Haridas. So this is the good fortune with which Haridas left this world. So a Chaitanya Charita e Amriterav Sindhu Bakarnamoya Tripta Kore Jara Eka Bindu Baba Sindhu Toribare Ache Jara Chitto Shraddha Kori Shuno Shei Chaitanya Charito Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Koriyas Chaitanya Charitamrita Kore Krishna Das. So he says, this is the concluding paragraph. So the concluding paragraph, he usually says something like this, that Chaitanya's activities are an ocean of nectar. So one will satisfy the ears and the mind by listening to it, even if he gets only one drop. So if you want to cross over this ocean of material life, then faithfully listen to the activities, to the Chaitanya Charita, to the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So falling down at the feet of Srila Rupa and Raghunath, Krishnadas Kaviraj recites the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's the colophon to every chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, so I went on for a long time. But it was worth it, I think. I also felt it was worthwhile to read about Haridas's Nirjan. Whatever lessons we can pick up from it. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda. The holy name, 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 the holy name. The holy name transforms misery into bliss. The holy name transforms suffering into rasa. They say, there's a Western saying, if life hands you a lemon, then make lemon juice. Right? So the process of making the lemon into lemon juice is to chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. The great souls, when they leave their body, they're surrounded by the holy name. So we weren't there when Pavel left his body. But what we're doing now, by remembering him and by chanting the holy name in memory of him, serves the dual purpose. Whatever it does for him, whatever it does for him. But for us, here we are. And our job is not finished because we're still alive. And the job of life is to love God. By loving God, we will perfect our love for everyone. And these special instances are reminders to us of what it means to love. And now, let us universalize that. Let us take that empathy and recognize. Atmopamyena. Atmopamyena is the word used in the Gita. The idea of recognizing that we're all in the same boat, that we're all suffering the same kinds of separations and loss. And that's what it means to be human. Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna, Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna, Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna, Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna, Govinda, Jai Jai Shyam Sundar Madana Mohan, Vrindavana Chandra, Jai Jai Radha Raman Ras Bihari, Shri Gokulananda, Jai Jai Radha Kanta Radha Vinod, Shri Radha Govinda, Jai Jai Raseshwari Vinodini, Bhanukula Chandra, Jai Jai Lalita Vishakha Adi, Jata Saki Vrinda, Jai Jai Sri Rupa Manjari Adi, Manjari Ananga, Jai Jai Purnamasi Kundalata, Jaya Vira Vrinda Tomra, Daya Kari Deo He Jugal, Charanaravinda Deho 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 Jugal, Charanaravinda Jai Jai Radhe Krishna, Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna, Govinda, Radhe 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 Govinda. Radhe Govinda Jaya Radhe Govinda, 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 Radhe Govinda Jai 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 Radhe Govinda. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna Govinda. Jai Jai Sri Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Haridasa Thakur Namacharya ki Jai. Kali Juga Pavanavatar Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Navadvipa Dham ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Jamuna Mai ki Jai. Jai Jai Tulasi Maharani ki Jai. Jai Go Mata ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Sri Sri Gurudeva Charanara Vrinda ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All right, so I will stop here. I will look at I should look at this. Is what it is? Sahai Madan Mohan is here. Oh, don't ask me to start asking questions that are not related to this. Okay, well, I'm only going to I'm not going to do everything. Jai Haridasa Boli Kori Jaya Dhwani Eto Boli Mahaprabhu Nachina Apani. Okay, so at least, look at this. Madan Mohan is chiming in. Now that's good to have a Shrota like Madan Mohan, who has translated these things into verse himself. All hail Haridas! All hail did resound. The great master himself danced at the sound. That's good. All hail Haridas! All hail did resound. The great master himself danced at the sound. Jai Sri Radhe. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.